All right, how's it going, Patreon? Today I'm going to show you how to make this really cool render here. Everything you're seeing here is done natively. There's no extra stuff here. This is the project file. You can grab that on the feed here on Patreon if you want to check out how I did all of that, or just, use the project file. So we're going to dive into how to create this really cool, crazy looking tentacle thing. So let's go ahead and make a new file and hop into it. It's not super difficult. First thing we're going to do is get some geometry into the scene. I'm going to go with a simple circular icosphere, and I'm going to pop up my subdivisions just like that. Maybe bring it down just like that. Now let's hop straight into the particle system, hit the plus icon, and go straight to hair. So now we have our hair that we're going to go and shape and stuff. I'm going to make this circle. I'm going to make this circle pretty small. I don't actually want to see the emitter, but we can hide that. I'm just going to make it small just visually so I can see when I'm working. I don't like to see the extra stuff. So here we have that. We want to actually shape this hair. So we're going to quickly go ahead, Shift A, and get a force field and click turbulence if we can find it right there. And we can head over into the turbulence and bring up that strength so it looks like spaghetti and just terrible. That's basically because the string, the tentacles are kind of low poly in a sense. So what I'm going to do is go ahead back here, and we need to go to viewport display right here on strand steps. We're going to pop it up to 8. Now 8 might be too much for your computer depending on how much you can handle. You might need to go lower, but again, your strand steps is how low poly your tentacles are going to be. We need to go ahead and make sure that we are in the cycles render engine. For this particular look, it needs to be done in cycles because the way the strand behaves shape-wise, you can't get that in Eevee. So we're going to go here into cycles. And if we go here and click the render button, there's currently no lighting. I'm going to hit the drop down and click scene world, scene light, so we can use one of those default HDRI lights. We have some ugly denoising going on. I hate viewport. I'm just going to turn that off so we can actually see what's going on. So now we have all this string. What I'm going to do is go back here into the particle settings and start playing with the shape. So we have the viewport display. One really important thing to note, if you click on render here, make sure your steps are also at 8, because what's going to happen is if you render it at your viewport display steps, it's only going to render at that default 3. It's going to look really ugly. So what's nice is you can preview in your viewport like a strand step of 3 and then render it at 8, and you get really nice things. It's just like a subdivision surface modifier in a way. I like it at 8, but if 8's too much for you, you can bump it down, but you'll still get a smooth render. Make sure you have B-spline clicked on. It's really nice. And then we're going to head on over into the hair strand shape. So we have hair shape. What I'm going to do is bring up that diameter, and that's going to give us some really thick, really crazy looking chords. Look how cool that is. We're already getting really cool stuff in this. And yeah, it's like a big spaghetti monster thing, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff with that. So I'm going to make mine pretty thick, something like this, and we're going to head on over into shading. So the shading part is actually, for me, really exciting because it's a really cool process. So what I'm going to do is we can actually we can just stay in this Eevee preview for now because we still get a little bit of geometry, but it's unfortunate that in Eevee you can't actually make these chords thicker, to my knowledge at least. So we can still start shading. So what I'm going to do is I am going to get some metallic, bring the roughness down, and bring my brightness down a little bit. And we're going to get in a mix shader, get an emission right there. And I'm going to pick one. Actually, you know what? We're not going to pick a color because we're going to use a color ramp to manipulate that color in a little bit. But I am going to put the emission into the other shader socket. Now, to actually make this do cool stuff and separate those, we're going to need to get a color ramp here. Plug the color into the factor, and we're going to get in a noise texture. The noise texture is meant to just be able to animate where things are placed, because the next node we're going to get is a hair info. Hair info, and we're going to use random. Now, to actually make all that stuff distribute, we need to go from linear to constant, so we get a nice hard edge, and you'll notice now those glowing things are coming in, those bright chords are coming in to our scene. You can see if we brighten it up right down here, now they're starting to work. Those are the glowing strands. Now, we want to color them. So we're going to get in a color ramp, C-O-L, color ramp, and pick the two colors you want in your scene. So I'm going to go with a neon blue and a really vibrant orange kind of red. And we're going to plug that there. And I want to go from linear to constant as well. Sorry, not B-spline. We're going to go to constant, put that straight in the middle, and we'll edit that in a second. You can see how it changes. So to get those to differentiate, we are going to go ahead and put this noise texture straight into the color ramp, the factor specifically. And so what that's going to do is be able to distribute. Now we can get blue and red. Now, why did we use a noise texture? Is we can go from 3D to 4D, and I'm going to bring my scale up a little bit. Bring the scale up, and then what happens is if you play with the W, you can actually animate them like a neon light, which is really cool and really exciting. I'm going to click on my icosphere here, and just for the heck of it, it is a hacky way to do it. But if you put a wireframe on it and bring it all the way to 0, it makes that guy disappear. So now we have this crazy mess. Let's go ahead and see how that looks in cycles. I do want to minimize the amount of glowing wires we see in this scene. So I'm going to bring it down to like this. And then I'm going to bring my color ramp here because there's not enough red particles. We're going to go with that. So now we have blue and red. And we'll go here to layout and see how that looks in the render. How cool is that? Now I'm going to go back to shading, and I'm going to show you one big problem with the shading of the lights. So I'm going to click on the lights, and we're back here in also sort of a darker view. So now we have that, but what the problem is here is if we bring that strength up, notice that these are flat. You can't tell that they have geometry because they're so bright and so flat. There's nothing really giving them any kind of dimension. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and get an RGB right here. And we're going to go here straight to a black color. And then what we're going to do is get a mix RGB. And we're going to plug this into that. Now what we're going to do here is add a layer weight. And I'll show you what that does. So we'll get in our layer weight. L-A-Y, layer weight. And we'll go here and put facing into the factor. And so now if we zoom in and start playing with the blend, you can see now we get some dimension, some gradient color change on the edge that you can kind of edit as you want, make it more subtle, make it more obvious. But now, how cool is this? You can see in like the orange wires, it really shows. But now you can see that those bright chords are also, a tube, not just a flat wire. It adds some dimension to it, and it really just makes it look really cool, really professional, and really subtle. And makes them look like really cool tubes, and that's what we want for this design. So now we're done with this particular section of the tutorial. Now we need to add some volume into our scene. So what I'm going to do here is go here to shading, and then I'm going to go from object to world, and we're going to click period to bring the world into view, and I'm going to get a volume. So VOL, principled volume. And we're going to plug the volume into the volume. Everything's going to disappear. That's because the density is too high. So bring that density to like 0.9, something like that. And now we have that going on. That's all we're going to need to touch in terms of the world. We'll go back to object. I do want to bring the brightness of these tubes up to say like 50. So now they're really bright and they'll be able to glow in the compositing if you do want to composite it with some glowing. Now, one last thing is we're going to add a light, but first I do want to pick my composition. Where do I want to put my camera? So I'm going to click this drop down, scene world, scene lights to go to what we're working with here. And let's just look around and see what's a really cool composition. I like this right here. So I'm going to hit Shift A, get my camera, Control Alt 0, snap it to view. And then I'm going to hit G and middle click to sort of zoom in to see what we're working with. I'm going to hit G, middle click to zoom in. Go with something like this. So now we're seeing this really cool situation with these chords coming out like that. That's really cool. So what I want to do is put a point light right back there to add sort of a highlight in the view. So I'm going to hit Shift A, get a light, point light. I'm going to hit G to position it and bring it down like this. So I want it pretty far out. Hitting G to move it around. I'm going to hit Z to the rendered view. And now I'm going to go ahead and make that light really bright by like 2000. Brings that bright. I do want to make it nice and blue. And then maybe 1000 is bright enough. And you can see how that makes a beautiful gradient, it makes a beautiful highlight, and it really takes this render to the next level. And there you go. That's how you make this render. It's really cool. If you're wondering about sample count, mine's at about 400. That can be high, but my computer can handle that. But if you want to bring it lower, that's fine. What you can do is actually go here and click your denoising data, and then you'll go here to the compositing, and I'll just delete what I've already done here. So I could show from scratch. So your image will be like that. What you do is you hit Shift. What you'll do is Shift A, get a viewer node, VIE, viewer. I'm gonna plug the image right there. What we're gonna do is hold down Shift, left click, and we're just gonna do that. Control, left click. And so now everything that goes into this wire goes to both composite and viewer nodes. That's in case if you wanna animate it, it will animate in. So what we're gonna do is get a denoise node, DE, denoise, plug it there. And then now we're gonna switch out a few sockets, image, normal, albedo, and if you want, you can add a glare node there. So now what I'm gonna do is go here to click on the rendering tab. I'm gonna hit image, render image, and I'll show you what my end result looks like. So here is my final result here with some denoising. And what I wanna do is click on compositing, and just out of curiosity here, I'm gonna hit Shift A and get in a glare node just to see how that would go. And then I'll go from streaks here to fog glow, and I don't know, it looks pretty cool. The glare does make it, give it an extra bit of pop. But there you go. That's how you make this really cool render. Feel free to make it. Feel free to send it to me if you made it. I love this design. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned something.